Let's go.
Welcome to Citizen. We've got a very special guest today, Nick Norris. I like the alliteration. Also, Chuck Norris, right?
Appreciate
so,
Yep.
tell us who you are and what you
It's a
do.
distant relative.
Is it really? I mean, there can't be that. Well, that's not his real name, right? What's his real name?
I thought it was Chuck Norris.
No, it's
You're gonna dash my hopes and dreams today.
I think his real name is something weird. Maybe it is Chuck Norris. I don't know. Oh, you know what? I'm thinking of John Wayne. His name is Marion Morrison. His real name, which is that was disappointing to find out. Anyways, tell us who you are and what you do.
Thank God.
Yeah, no shit.
I'm Nick Norris. How far back do you want me to go?
All the way.
All the way. Nick Norris grew up in Chicago, Naval Academy grad. Served in the SEAL teams from 03 to 13. Transitioned off active duty, which seems like ages ago, and now I'm an entrepreneur. Started a company called Protect Products, and sit on the board for a nonprofit called Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions that is probably the leader in helping with the veteran health epidemic and utilizing psychedelics as a modality to catalyze true change on that front. So that's me in brief. I'm sure we can talk more, and you can ask me what you will. And I'm happy
sure.
to answer.
Yeah, I'm curious about what years did you say you were at the academy?
I was there from 99 to 03.
So that was a pretty transformational period for all the service academies, because instead of I guess producing people who were the career trajectory was different then, right? Like you didn't expect
Totally
necessarily
different.
to go right into combat and things like that.
No. I mean, I've spoke a lot about that. When the towers fell, like everything changed, right? Because they were sending guys, naming from the academy, let's say guys going into the Marine Corps.
Mm-hmm.
So you're starting to hear about guys going over to Afghanistan in 2001, and then we started to actually have graduates killed. So perspective changed significantly. It was no longer just like a cool, challenging thing to do. It was a real sense of accountability and a responsibility for taking on a leadership role and then going into combat.
And I assume did Bush or anybody, Rumsfeld, somebody come to the academy and kind of give you guys a psych up speech or whatever? I know they come for the commencements and things like that, but
yeah. You know what's funny? I don't think we ever had anybody. I mean, I'm sure we had a couple notable figures show up for like Forrestal lectures, but Rumsfeld spoke at our commencement, and then I believe Bush came out for the year prior for 02 and did the commencement address.
You probably want like the lowest profile, lowest ranking dude in government coming to that thing, because then your command isn't so crazy about everything, right?
Oh, dude, yeah. The higher profile the individual, the more of a nightmare it is for everybody that is participating.
Yeah, it was so dumb. So we deployed with the surge. So Jared Taylor, you know Jared, I think he's on the board of vets as well, right?
He is. Yep.
When we got back, I think it was late March of 2008. Then I was in the 82nd, so we did division review a couple of months later, and it was Bush, because we had done the surge and everything came out. God, what a shit show. It was a complete nightmare. Like we were out on one of the parade grounds, and they had like metal detectors showed up. We had to take the springs and followers out of our M4 mags. Like, come on, man. What are we doing here? You know what I mean? It was so goofy. Anyways, yeah, I mean, just the tone of the service academy especially had to change, because that's one place. There aren't a whole lot of institutions you can be a part of that aren't active military. I guess technically that is active military, but like actually active military, where at that point that there was a timeline on war, right? Like we're getting ready to go actually do something that you spend 3, 4, 5, if you're a grad student, sometimes longer years in. I mean, that had to change things quite a bit for you guys.
Yeah, I mean, I think it did for anybody, especially if you were pursuing, combat arms, right? If you're going to go into the Marine Corps and pursue an infantry job, or you're going into the SEAL teams or EOD or something, you knew that things were going to get real.
Mm.
And, as I've said before, it was kind of a personal challenge prior to 9/11. I wanted to do it selfishly, probably for myself, just to prove that I could do something difficult. And then post 9/11, you had to really do some soul searching and
Mm.
determine if you were doing it for the right reason. So, I mean, and that's the right thing, right? You want to be in that mindset if you're going to pursue, any type of leadership role in combat, and not just as an officer, right? I mean, like, there's leadership through the ranks, and if you're going into it with any type of selfish mindset, I think it's the wrong reason to go.
Sure, yeah. Yeah, I always think about it. It's kind of cheesy, but that scene in 300 where the Greeks are like, "You guys only brought 300 soldiers," and it's like, "You guys brought a bunch of farmers, dude. Like, we're here to fight." You know what I mean? Yeah,
Yep.
it's really interesting. The turnaround. Now, I'm not just this doesn't really have anything to do with anything. I'm just kind of curious. When you're in the Naval Academy, what's the pipeline to buds and all that stuff look like? Is it just you gotta do you select an MOS when you're at the academy, or how does it work? I don't really know.
Yeah, you kind of have to wait till the 11th hour.
Mm.
You go through service selection. I mean, there's a ton of stuff leading up to it that really shapes whether or not you're going to get what you want to do. But you don't find out until, like, I mean, late first semester or early second semester, I believe, senior year.
Oh wow.
So, yeah, as a freshman, I mean, like, there's probably 300 dudes that wanted to go into the SEAL teams or
Mm.
go to buds, right? Everybody wants to do that because, it seems super cool. And then you start going through selection right away. So, like, I went to selection at school to go to dive school after
Mm.
freshman year. I went to selection to go to jump school at Benning after sophomore year. And then you go to selection to go to mini buds, which is like Buds Light. Not even, it's a couple weeks long over the summer. And all those things, to include kind of your grades, your participation, athletics, all that stuff, it factors in. And then you go to a board, you sit in front of a bunch of senior enlisted and officers. They interview you, and then they determine, at the time that I was there, it was 16 of us, but one of us, a guy named Pete Scobell, was actually a prior enlisted SEAL. So he very likely was going to take one of the billets. So we had about 15 billets to go into SEAL training, or buds at that point.
So if you're a prior enlisted and you go, I mean, look, not a whole lot of prior enlisted people go to the academy in the first place, but if you're prior enlisted and you go to the academy, and you had already graduated buds, do you have to go back through buds again, or do you just how does that
No,
work?
thankfully you do
Oh, I
not.
was gonna say that would
I'm
suck,
I'm
dude.
sure.
Jesus
I
Christ.
know. I'm sure Pete was very thankful for
Yeah.
that. And and I don't want to tell his story, but I think he was actually like, he really didn't even I initially want to go to the Naval Academy. I think he had done a platoon on the East Coast, and I think they just saw something in him. One of his senior enlisted and was like, "Hey, man, like, I think you should go and do this." So he reluctantly went. So it would be terrible if he had to go back through buds again if he got selected,
So
but he did not.
no, that's definitely good. That would have been that would have been absolutely terrible. So you were in the Navy from I guess technically from '99 until when exactly?
Till I got off active duty in 13, and then I spent some time in the reserves. Decided to transition fully off,
Mm.
just to focus on family, and professionally, I was just in a position where, deploying again or getting activated to deploy just wasn't in the cards. And I wanted to be honest with myself and the unit that I was attached to, and if I can't commit, I can't commit, right?
Right.
So I decided to get off active the reserve component. Probably 3 years after leaving active duty.
Does the Navy have like the Army has 19th and 20th Special Forces Group? Is there something like that for SEALs in the Navy, a reserve unit?
Yeah, so two, the East Coast and a West Coast SEAL
Mm.
team. So SEAL team 17 and I think 18. May stand corrected, but yeah, basically, you do the reserve gig,
Mm.
a lot of support to kind of like the auxiliary commitments. And like when I was in, we were doing a lot of stuff with in like South Korea and supporting kind of that effort over there, and maintaining some type of commitment with the South Koreans.
Cool. Well, that's enough for the bio. Let's get into some meat and potatoes here. You're a Naval Academy graduate. There's a lot of bad press, I guess, surrounding how we're operating the academies and how we're operating even parts of the military right now. Do you have any thoughts on that? I'm not sure you do, but anything you would like to share?
Yeah, yeah, nothing comes to mind immediately, but I'm happy to have a discussion about it. I mean, if you have anything that you want my opinion on.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, so you mentioned multiple different selections to get access to things. That's kind of how it works. It's supposed to be a meritocracy, right?
Sure.
And the diversity that we're primarily focused on in the military is diversity of capability, not necessarily of any kind of biographic detail. We don't really care about that typically because it's not relevant, right?
Totally.
But the DEI stuff, diversity, equity, and inclusion stuff has kind of crept its way into the service academies now as well, even at the DoD. And I wonder from your perspective, look, we're not going to solve this problem because we're not on the Joint Chiefs. We're not at the service academies. And you and I are probably not going to run for politics either. But for people who are looking to get involved, go to the academies or have family members in the academies or whatever, what advice do you have for them to operate in that kind of environment? Because ultimately it is the ultimate meritocracy, right? Where we either succeed or we die. So just your thoughts on
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I mean, hey, we've seen kind of like a slow progression towards kind of diversity and inclusion. It was a big hot topic within the SEAL teams when I was, probably towards the end of my active duty time, and you know, I agree kind of wholly with a guy named Andy Stumpf, who
Mm,
I think pretty well. It doesn't matter. Um, for me, it's a true meritocracy, right? Like if you are capable of doing the job, and I don't care what job that is, then the best person, most capable of doing that job, should be in the role. And it's so important with the military, right? I mean, we are charged with defending this country and our way of life and protecting those that can't protect themselves. And the last thing I would want to see happen is that we sacrifice capability for something like diversification or inclusion. Now, granted, we should never shut our doors and not allow people to try to enter any one branch of service or any specific capability within the services. But once you go through that selection process, the selection process should not change. It should not be altered or obscured in order to conform to some new policy. It really
sure.
should be a meritocracy, right? I mean, that's why we're here, and that's why we've had the greatest military on the face of the earth.
Sure. Yeah, I agree with that 100%. I mean, I like that you said no matter what the job is, because especially over the last 10 years or so, the soft community has been augmented by non-operators quite a bit. And it's
Yep.
because we've leaned on that community very heavily to accomplish a lot of stuff because, look, that's the world we live in now. We don't live in an attrition world anymore. We live in a precision strike world. So it makes sense, right? And now we have Rangers on the unit, doing breaching and stuff like that. That's been going on since 2010 or so. Same thing, slice elements on tier 1 and tier 2 units all over the place. It makes a lot of sense. And I think about it from, look, men are particularly good at feats of strength and violence and also mental compartmentalization, right? Which is not necessarily healthy long term, but when you're on the X, it's very helpful, right? Um, and women are particularly good at creative thought and organization, and we're finally starting to see more of this, where the extremely talented women are being used in ways that benefit the effort, right? Instead of just trying to check a block somewhere, like Shannon Kent, for example, RIP to her. But she's, I don't know if you're familiar with her story.
No, I'm not.
Her husband's Joe Kent, who ran for Congress in Oregon. If you're familiar with him, he was a special forces guy. But she was naval intelligence and was killed in a bombing, I think in 2019, January 2019. But if you look at her service record, she's responsible for the kill or capture of almost 600 terrorists, right?
Mm.
Not like the dumb Jay Shalmati dum-dums that we were fighting in Baghdad and shit, but like legit ISIS terrorists and things like that, like hard targets. And it makes like we can't have an honest conversation about this stuff sometimes. Like, oh, what do you think that women should just be doing this or men should just be doing this? Like, no, I think that people have innate biological skills and we need to use them to the best of their capability for our effort. That's kind of how it all works, right? Like I'm not going to put a 6'1" guy at center in the NBA. It's not, and it's no offense. I don't hate people that are 6'1". I don't want to box them out from doing a job or anything like that. I just want people to, you're setting people up to succeed there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, hey, everybody has their strengths and weaknesses, and I mean, I don't think we should, kind of paint a picture that like, hey, just this group of people is
Mm-hmm.
capable of doing the job because, hey, human beings are a wide ranging, capable species, and there's people from all walks of life that will surprise you at what they can be good at
Yeah.
or are not good at.
And you know
So
what's really funny about that? People have this idea of operators that they're all like 6'3" Viking hulking dudes, and
no,
almost every operator I know is between 5'8" and 5'10". Like almost every single one of them they're about the
yeah,
same general size.
and if you met me, I'm like just shy of 5'6", so
Yeah.
and I'm not a hulking human being.
Yeah, I'm telling you, like almost every tier 1 and tier 2 operator. There's exceptions, obviously. There's some big dudes, especially in SEALs and special forces, but in like tier 1 units, you don't see a whole lot of big hulking dudes. I mean, it's like you're almost an endurance athlete at that point, right?
Totally. I mean, I saw that. I mean, I always had the thought that I needed to be the biggest person and
Mm,
just like lift heavy and do. And there's a time and a place for that. But while I was on active duty, I mean, we were doing long distance offset patrols into targets and villages, and it actually was like a detriment to be
yeah,
heavier and
right.
bigger, right? So like being 160 pounds and being able to go all day and be able to carry a bunch of weight on my back was like way more productive for the overall group than being 190 pounds for my frame
Right.
and then getting cramping and being dehydrated like 3 clicks into a patrol. So yeah, being an endurance athlete and being strong, but being able to carry weight over distance, I think was like the most important attribute
Mm.
that you could emulate.
Especially when you get into the mountains and stuff like that. I mean, you don't want to be carrying around a bunch of weight up there with the O2 levels down. Anyways, yeah, see, we're having a conversation about characteristics that is irrespective of any kind of, I guess, biographical detail. You either fit this mold or you don't fit this mold. It doesn't matter, and none of the other
Totally.
stuff really matters, right?
Yep. Yeah, you don't change a selection process regardless of what you're being selected to do, um, because of an agenda or some measure that is being forced into uh, an organization. It should really be based on selecting the best people with the right criteria to do the best job humanly possible.
Yeah, 100%. Let's pivot now. I know you're familiar, but for anybody that's a new listener, this show is kind of organized around a series of principles that I think kind of embody what the American experience is meant to be. And that experience is that you can either accept responsibility for the task you need to perform to, I guess, ensure you have your rights. And that is what we refer to as a citizen, somebody that exercises their responsibilities to attain their rights. And then, or you can be a subject, who is somebody who sits back and lets somebody else secure those rights for them. And we all prefer to be the former, right? Because
Absolutely.
it's a very American characteristic to not want to be told what to do. I don't know where that comes from. I've been all over the world, and it isn't the same everywhere else. But here, we're just like, nah, fuck you, I'm not doing that. Even if it makes sense sometimes, we're like, nah, we're not doing that. Um, but there's a couple of principles that you pulled out of the list that I want to touch on. The first one is, I'll do something every day to help my country, my countrymen, or all men. Tell me what that means to you and why you think it's important.
Um, well, it means everything to me. I mean, I entered the military and the SEAL team specifically because uh, I wanted to do my best and be my best, the best version of myself, to support the people around me. for a greater cause and to pursue a greater cause and a bigger mission. And that didn't end for me when I left active duty service. I've committed myself in a very big way to mental health, and veteran mental health, which has a cascade effect on the rest of the population.
Mm.
If we can, do things to help our own, right, to help the guys that I served with in combat on the mental health front, those things are going to permeate the rest of society and help everybody. And I feel like that's like where I am making the biggest, or have the potential to make the biggest impact now, is to continue to take action to help the guys that I love and care about, that I served alongside in combat. And frankly, reluctantly, they ask for help, and they don't want to ask for help, but to step up and actually be a voice to make sure that those guys are getting the help that they need, and via the modalities that are going to be most effective to help them. So yeah, I mean, it's the thing that drives me and makes me feel most fulfilled, is doing something for others with no expectation of anything in return.
Right. There's an old quote. I can't remember who it is, but it's you can never live a perfect day until you do something for someone who will never be able to repay you. I think is how it goes.
100%. Well,
Um,
I mean, and
yeah.
I've felt that too, brother. I mean, not even within the intention of like feeling something good, just doing something for a friend.
Mm.
And then after the fact, realizing that, like, what, I took great pleasure in just being there for somebody and helping somebody. And then in like kind of the wake of that, realizing that, I truly wasn't looking for any type of reciprocation.
Yeah, but
And
you're satisfying one of the two most basic biological urges for a man, which is uh, uh, provide and protect on one side, and then obviously to procreate. But let's the provide and protect part. Every meaningful thing you ever do in your life will be in the service of other people, whether it's your family or your community, your country, or whatever it is. Whether it's people that are just generally speaking in need. And it's why I say this a lot on the show, but I like to hammer it into people's brains. Um, I believe it was Gandhi who said, if you truly want to find yourself, lose yourself in the service of others. Because typically what we do
mm-hmm.
is when we go out looking to help people, we tend to look to help people that are struggling with things that we are either currently struggling with or have struggled with in the past. So it's a pathway to, I guess, repairing the damage done to us as well. And
Totally.
it just happens to be that way, right? So you solve two problems, and also
Yeah,
you feel pretty good because you're doing what you're supposed to be doing as a human being.
dude, I couldn't agree with you more, brother. I mean, I've gone through my own struggles with mental health, and, I found deep relief through a number of things, but the catalyst was, psychedelic assisted therapy. And in going back and supporting guys that are about to go through, and actually volunteering at retreats like that, I walk away feeling like, I mean, I feel selfish. Like I took so much away from being there as a supporting friend, uh, that it keeps me coming back, right? And you don't anticipate that, but it's almost better going back in support of that type of effort than going through the effort itself.
Right. Yeah, and that's a good analog for military or any other kind of service in general. Service doesn't end when your military service ends, right? For a lot of
Totally.
people, and like I think for most people, it should be only the beginning, right? Because now you have this breadth of experience, and one of the most important qualities that can only be developed in the crucible, which is to be calm and reasonable in chaos, right? That's a skill that most people will never get to learn. And we have,
Yep.
through, I mean, look, it wasn't exactly fun all the time, but we did have the opportunity to learn that. And if you have that kind of skill, I think it's important to make sure that you're exercising in a way that helps other people.
Yeah, totally. And so many people struggle when they leave. So let's just focus on the military. People leave service and they go through this period of struggle. And there's a number of reasons why people struggle when they transition, but one of which is like a loss of purpose. And the purpose, really is kind of like that ability to serve your brothers, right? Your brothers in arms when you're in a combat arms profession. And when you walk away from that, and people can't apply themselves in a way to serve others outside of the military, I think you get lost. I mean, I think it leaves a massive void in your life, and you try to reinvent yourself. You try to just kind of find a job and provide. But if you're not finding ways to support others and serve others continually throughout life, um, it definitely leaves a you know a want, a desire that
Sure.
is going to be left unfilled.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, and it's I want to touch on something you said at the outset there. It's like when you joined the military, you were doing something to challenge yourself, right? Um,
Hmm.
to better yourself, and there's we're in an age these days where people talk a lot about self care, but mostly it's just like completely self centered people that don't want to experience any kind of pain or struggle. That's usually the people that talk about that stuff. But it is real that that's necessary. My friend Andy Frisella likes to say that personal excellence is the ultimate rebellion, right? So looking at all the like it's what makes the great truly great. When we see like Jordan or Kobe or somebody like that face some kind of challenge, and they would not bitch about it. They would just be like, you know what, fuck you. I'm going to go out and destroy this guy now, right? It's that attitude that keeps us moving forward. And if you can align that kind of attitude, like that capture of the masculine aggression and need to succeed, and marry that with helping people, right? You can do a lot of good work.
Totally. And you got to take care of yourself first. I mean, it runs counter to kind of like how we are raised in the military, right? You always want to take care of everybody else, but if you're not pursuing excellence personally, like you can't be there in a significant way for other people, and you're not going to give them the most powerful components of who you are if you're not taking care of yourself.
Right. The last thing you want to be is out of breath and at muscle failure when you're trying to drag your buddy out of the fire. You know what I mean? Like
Totally.
that.
Yeah.
Nothing could possibly make you feel more useless than that. Frankly.
Yeah.
I want to move on to the next one. It's I'll put more into this country than I take out of it, and I think it's something that it's very obvious to people like us because of the careers we've had and stuff like that. It was very obvious what service meant, but only 0.45% of the population serves in the military in a like a combat fashion, right? So, but you found, and a lot of other people have found, even after the military, ways to serve, and I think it's a good example, right? To make sure that we're letting people know, like, hey, serving isn't something I did; it's who I am, and it's who you should be as well, right?
Hmm.
Like we are all responsible for one another. So I wonder, from your perspective, um, what does it mean to put more into the country than you take out of it?
Well, well, I'll start by saying that, like, you know, you have people, a lot of people always will thank you for serving, appreciate the fact that you were in the military, you served during combat years. And, I appreciate that, but I have been given so much through the service that I gave to this country that I feel forever indebted
Mm,
to this country, and I feel forever indebted to the SEAL teams because it gave me the opportunity to pursue excellence and to become something that, frankly, I don't know if I would be in the same place, and I wouldn't be in the same place that I am right now if it weren't for the opportunity to serve this country. So I the drive to serve others, yeah, it may be innate and biologically ingrained in who I am as a human being, but it comes from a drive to give back to a country that gave me everything that I am today. And if I can find something that it keeps me fired up, drives passion in my life after service, and I can plow myself into that to help others, I feel like I'm slowly repaying a debt that I'll never fully repay. Because I feel like the only people that fully uh, repaid that debt are those that sacrificed their
mm.
life in defense of this country.
Sure, yeah. Let me play devil's avocado here a little bit. Let's say you're somebody who doesn't feel that way, who hasn't necessarily either had the same kind of opportunities or didn't know that they were available or whatever, just decided not to use them. And now, there's a lot of nihilism in our culture, a lot of cynicism these days,
Hmm.
about, how everything's rigged against us and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And look, there's certainly examples of that. And whether or not it's true doesn't really matter because people feel that way, right? And that's what's
Hmm.
important. So, how would you speak to somebody like that and try to get them back on board and on our side of the tug of war rope, I guess?
Well, I mean, the being a cynic, right, or a nihilist, is just part of the problem, right? You're not part of the solution. You're perpetuating negativity, and you're not doing anything to proactively change the situation. So I I've been a huge advocate of uh, meditation, mindfulness, whatever you want to call it, in the last several years, as part of my kind of journey back to wholeness. And I'll tell you that, and I tell my children this: you are in control. You're the captain of your ship in essence, and you can decide whether or not you're joyful, whether you're going to be angry, whether you're going to be resentful or hateful, or cynical. It's all up to you, right? No one else can um, drive you to that place.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like, for anybody that's kind of embracing this, like, I don't care, throw my hands up in the air, just give up and blame everybody else. You truly haven't embraced kind of like who you really are and the fact that you are in control of your own destiny. And it starts with each individual embracing that type of mindset. A controlling mindset over where your awareness goes and how you look at the world and how you treat other people. And frankly, if every single person in this world just held themselves accountable for the way that they felt every day and didn't blame everybody else, they would probably be much happier, and this world would be a much better place.
Yeah,
And maybe
yeah.
that's altruistic, but it's a very simple practice. Uh, you just have to you kind of have to lower, kind of drop the ego a bit, and hold yourself personally accountable for how you feel and how you look at the world every day.
Yeah, perspective plays a big role in all this stuff, right? I mean, it's think of it as just acting in good faith. If somebody asks you a question that they really want an answer to, or they're trying to figure something out, and you answer with a platitude, or you patronize them or something, they can tell, right? They can
Totally.
tell, and you're not engaged in a real conversation at that point. You're basically just wasting everybody's time.
Yeah. Well, it'd be vulnerable too, right? When you blame somebody else or you're pointing at something else as the cause of your problems, like, you're not being vulnerable with the fact that, like, you're probably, every single person can attribute something that they're doing to their problems, right? I mean, to some situation. And I think holding ourselves personally accountable to any degree, um, for a situation that upsets you or you're not aligned with, is the starting point. And every single person can do that. I don't There's not a person walking the face of the earth that can't hold themselves accountable for something, some part of something that is upsetting to them.
Right. um, since we're talking about attitude and service and stuff, I want to pivot into the vets thing. Tell me what this program is exactly. I think Jared's talked about it on Drinker Bros before, but we haven't really discussed that program here on Citizen before.
Yeah, so Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions is a nonprofit. It was started by a dear friend of mine and his wife, a guy Marcus Capone, who is a SEAL team operator, and then his wife Amber Capone. And frankly, I think it's probably one of the leading organizations right now in this country, and perhaps globally, advocating for the use of psychedelics in a controlled, kind of supervised fashion.
All right, we got interrupted there by some tech issues. So tell me about vets.
Yeah, so Veterans Exploring Treatment Solutions is a nonprofit that my good friend Marcus Capone, who served in the SEAL teams, and his wife Amber Capone started, really to advocate for those struggling with mental health issues and traumatic brain injury, within the veteran community. And vets has been focused predominantly on soft veterans because you have to start someplace. You don't have the resources to help everybody all at once. Um, but a big part of the organization, beyond providing grants for guys to go down to countries where these modalities are legal and have a retreat experience, a peak psychedelic experience. The organization is really focused on political advocacy and research because we feel like through political advocacy and research, we can get these modalities legalized medically within the United States. So our veteran community doesn't need to go to Mexico or Costa Rica or elsewhere to seek healing. And I think we can impact a bigger subset of the population through advocacy and research. And there's some tremendous stuff going on. Vets partnered up with Stanford Medical School on an ibogaine study, and ibogaine is one of the predominant psychedelics that's been beneficial for our guys. And that study has concluded. They're going to release a research paper this coming year, and already the lead researchers are telling us that it's tremendous. I mean, there is legitimate scientific evidence that this stuff is helping to heal the brain, specifically concussive injury, concussive injury, and the things that fall out from those type of injuries, and then outside of that, there's a whole psychospiritual component to it. Unlocking the compartmentalization that helps us so much while we're in combat and dealing with high stress scenarios is like our worst enemy when we leave the military. And these experiences help to unlock a lot of that compartmentalization and, frankly, allow you to kind of address the things that were unaddressable and bring you back to the place you were before you endured the stressors that we all endured going overseas and fighting.
Yeah, the breaking down the compartmentalization thing is really interesting because it's almost like there's dead rats in the wall and you got to tear the drywall out. Like you can't see them, but you can smell them. You know what I mean?
Oh, totally.
Yeah, and it's not always a problem, but when it's a problem, it's a problem, and it's something that's particularly in the soft community with all the explosions and shit is very prevalent. Tell me about. I assume you've done the ibogaine treatment.
I have.
Tell me about that experience, and tell me what ibogaine is exactly. I know, but just for the audience, tell me what it is, and then tell me about your experience.
Yeah, so ibogaine is the dominant alkaloid that's found in a number of plants, but specifically a plant called Iboga tabernath that's found in equatorial Africa, specifically Gabon. And the native population there, the Bwidis, actually have used it for eons as a rite of passage. They actually source the ibogaine and other alkaloids from the root bark of iboga. And in the West, ibogaine was first seen as an addiction disruptor. I think Howard Lotsof was the first person in the West really to utilize ibogaine and identify its benefits. He was a heroin addict, and he went through an iboga. He actually had a full-blown iboga trip, which is longer than ibogaine by a factor of 3 to 5x, and came out of that experience completely sober. No cravings, no withdrawal symptoms, and he had been a long-term heroin user. So it had been used in the West to break addictive patterns, specifically with opiate addicts. And then, they're outside of addiction. We're now seeing that it's helping with concussive injury, neuroinflammation, release of brain-derived neurogrowth factor and kind of neurogenesis, and kind of just that reduction of inflammation, I think, is really helping the brain and the connective tissue, the neurons heal. And the experience is unlike any other psychedelic experience that exists. Ibogaine's classified as an oneirogen, which is a dream-producing compound. So when you take it, you're pretty much ataxic. You're laying down. You're medically supervised, and when your eyes are closed or covered, you're in like a waking REM state. So very clear, very vivid visions of, a lot of it is kind of your life. Unlike other psychedelics, it's very grounded in who you are and your past and your memories, and people that take it, I'd say 60 to 70% will actually have this visionary experience. And I mean, beyond description, but you can recall memories from a third person perspective as if you were an omniscient observer watching yourself and people in your past, like, um, you know, going through things that are memories of yours. And, it's a very teaching experience.
Mm.
You're able to deal with, tougher things in your life that you might have compartmentalized for a reason because it was hurtful or very painful, and be able to kind of address them in a non-painful, non-hurtful manner. And it's not dissociating from it. It's actually addressing it and figuring out why you feel so much pain and why you
Mm.
carry and harbor resentment or something like that.
Yeah,
So
experiential avoidance just doesn't work
no,
in life or in psychology, psychotherapy either. I mean, it just for the listeners out there, a lot of this sounds really technical, but from your perspectives, I assumed a lot of you have probably participated in cognitive behavioral therapy, and this is kind of that, but
yep,
it's internal cognitive behavioral therapy, right?
yeah,
It,
yeah,
it's think about it this way. So you get put inside of your mind with your problems, and your brain, being the problem solver that it is, solves that problem, right? That's and whatever it happens to be, whether you're coming to grips with something, identifying something to work on later, whatever it is, it's essentially 3 years of psychotherapy and several hours, right?
oh, it could be like a lifetime of psychotherapy, right? It's like, I mean, there's stuff that you come out of that experience realizing and truly understanding that you could sit in psychotherapy for decades and maybe avoid it, right? Because we're probably the best at avoiding stuff that's hurtful, painful, and you don't even know you need to address certain things because you don't want to touch it, right? And you're kind of forced with it. You're forced to address it in the experience in a way that is manageable. And by making it manageable, you truly can actually figure something out, and you can take something away that's going to be fruitful for you after the experience.
Yeah, it's a really interesting process, and I want to circle back on the addiction thing. So far as I can tell, just from years of being involved in it and research and stuff, there's a couple of primary issues that most, at least male veterans, deal with. All right, back to it. We got interrupted again, but the some of the major problems that especially male veterans run into are the purposelessness, right? Like your entire life is defined by having a set of skills and applying those skills in a very specific way towards a specific outcome, right? That's a very
Mm-hmm.
it sucks sometimes to be in the military, but that part of it is super easy, easier than regular life for sure.
Totally.
And then of course there's traumatic brain injury and things like that, which is pretty common. And then, addiction is a big part of it as well. A lot of dudes with leg and back injuries who, for some reason, the TRICARE and the VA decided to give us whatever pills we asked for a good 15 years, and that didn't work out. Imagine that, right?
Yeah, or didn't ask for, right?
Yeah,
They were,
exactly. Yeah.
hey, I went in with this problem, and the solution is let's numb it and avoid it
Right.
instead of going to the root cause.
Yeah, and the reason I'm bringing it up, that last point, is because you talked about the guy that had the long-term heroin addiction. Now, I know people personally who have had long-term prescription painkiller addictions and have done ibogaine one time and ended that
Mm-hmm.
in one
Yep,
session.
totally. It's not unheard of. I mean, that's the reason. I mean, people that are out of options have gone to ibogaine as an option, and frankly, I mean the success rate is uncanny compared to any other type of treatment. And granted, it's not the magic pill, right? You have to go back into a positive environment. You got to put the work in yourself afterwards. But to disrupt that addictive pattern, there's nothing else in the world like it that I've seen.
Yeah,
And I've experienced it too. I mean, I went into my ibogaine experience kind of like not admitting that I had an alcohol issue, but I was habitually drinking to numb and to dissociate from the shit that I was compartmentalizing. And I walked out of ibogaine, didn't go in with the intent to stop drinking, but I walked away from ibogaine, and I mean, like literally lost all desire, all urge to drink, and frankly, I haven't drank. I mean, in the last 3 years, and not that I like condemn it at all. I think that it can be a healthy practice. You know, but for me, it became unhealthy, and maybe the Ibogaine knew better than me because
Mm.
it wasn't a healthy part of my life, and that addiction disruptive component of the experience was tremendous for me.
What do you think it was about it that made you? Was it the stuff you were trying to numb wasn't there anymore necessarily, or what was it that made you just kind of back away from alcohol like that?
So there was like a physiologic kind of like aversion to it. First off, like I took a drink, a month or two afterwards, and it just didn't taste good
Mm.
like it used to. But I think that I just had this. I had such clarity afterwards. Just I everything was clear, and my priorities were clear. And for me, I'm a father of two kids. Being present for my son and my daughter became, I mean, yeah, duh, it's like the most important thing in my life, but I think I was putting so much other stuff ahead of them, rationalizing that these other things, whether it be work or, my personal happiness or whatever, that stuff was more important than my kids. And I think walking away, I had such clarity of thought and clarity of prioritization that I just didn't want to muddy those waters ever again. Like
Mm.
it just felt good to know what is important and to live a life that is, prioritized in that respect.
And that's all like your internal dialogue and stuff, which is good because the mindset really matters. But do you know of anything, or do you know what happens physiologically that spurs some of this stuff as well?
I mean, I've heard, and again, like ibogaine pharmacologically, if I said that right,
Mm.
is one of the most complex compounds out there, right? So when you look at the ibogaine molecule, uh, it's just crazy complex, and the researchers are trying to understand it. I mean, the same way that they're trying to understand antidepressants and other type of kind of mental health medicines. We don't even know. We know that they interact with certain neuroreceptors, but beyond that, we don't understand what's going on in the brain after the fact. I mean, that's what all this research is getting plowed into. I think the simplest way that somebody had described to me is that from like an opiate addiction standpoint, it's like those receptors are like damaged
Mm.
and from years of opiate abuse, and it's literally like wiping the receptors clean and giving you kind of a fresh start. So it's like kind of pressing like the hard reset button on the computer, and then giving you a fresh start where those neuroreceptors are back to the way they were prior to opiate abuse. And they don't need whatever it is, Oxycontin or
Mm.
Vicodin or heroin, to feel satiated anymore. So it's kind of just like a hard reset of the old CPU,
Yeah, yeah.
in the most dumbed down version humanly possible.
No, that makes a lot of sense actually. Uh, it seems like it's been like I know a lot of people that have gone through this, and the results are you said the word uncanny earlier. It is kind of uncanny. It's like the same result every single time, right? Which is
Yeah,
kind of weird.
yeah,
Like you don't see that with other styles of treatment. Usually it's pretty unique to the individual. And look, there are parts of it here that are unique as well because everybody has unique experiences, but the outcome generally speaking has been the same so far as I can tell.
yeah. It's pretty prolific. I mean, I mean, hey, I wasn't a user of illicit drugs before this. I had never smoked anything. I had never like taken anything that you would have classified as like a drug.
Mm.
And it's made me a complete evangelist because of the good that I have seen come out of this. I mean, it's the reason why I feel compelled to share. Tell my story is my story, but the outcome is so similar for everybody for the most part that goes through that people need to know about it. And as a country, we should really be seriously looking at these things as a solution
Mm.
as opposed to the band-aid kind of temporary fix that we're getting out of antidepressants and anti-anxiety meds and the like that's being prescribed to not just veterans but our population as a whole.
Right. Yeah.
um,
Well,
This stuff is it's incredible.
the government and pharmaceutical companies are always going to be scared of things that grow in the ground, right?
Totally.
Because they're harder to
Very hard to
monetize.
patent.
Yeah. And that is what it is. Before we'll wrap up here in a sec, but tell me about your company, Protect.
Yeah, I mean, Protect was born out of kind of me getting well and me finding kind of this path to wellness again. I mean, it kind of is intrinsically connected to kind of what we've been talking about with psychedelics and meditation. Um, we wanted to build a company that gave people tools to galvanize the foundational habits and routines in their life that we know move the needle. And some of those things for me personally were uh, better hydration in order to yield better sleep, healthier sleep. And frankly, sleep is like it's either the root of all evil or it can be the solution to kind of all of your health concerns if you're getting enough of it and quality sleep. So the company was born to give people some tools to kind of enact better habits and routines surrounding sleep and hydration. And we produce a whole lineup of liquid packs, so liquid, not powder. Hydration, so we have like a performance electrolyte product. We have a sleep support that's non-melatonin, so it doesn't leave you groggy and it's not habit forming. Immune system support, and we have an energy. All of them are, without sugar. We use stevia and
Mm.
are really designed to kind of make water taste better, get you hydrating better, and give you a fundamental nutrition to support better sleep.
Yeah, I'm drinking the energy one now. I've always been a big fan of your products. I don't know that a lot of people from our side. Look, I learned about it through Baker actually. Through I think it was
Yep.
Black Rifle's hunter recruitment project was the first time I went down there to film some stuff with them, and he was throwing this stuff around. And I drink a lot of water, but I don't drink a lot of just plain water because it's gross. Right?
Terrible.
Yeah, it's fucking boring, man. So usually
Yeah.
what I've supplemented with a lot of stuff over the years. Most stuff has sugar in it, and then
Yep.
there's like Mio and stuff like that, but it doesn't really taste like anything. You know what I mean? It tastes different than water, but it doesn't taste like anything. The flavors of
Yeah.
your stuff are really good. I haven't tried the rest formula yet, but I will. I'm going to pick some of that up and check it out and see if I like it because I hear you on that melatonin thing. I do like it for sleep, but it does certainly make me feel really groggy in the morning, and I hate that shit.
What's a in melatonin? I mean, it's a hormone, and a lot of people don't realize that. So, like, not dissimilar to any other type of like hormone supplementation. If you're putting a bunch of it in your system, your body says, okay, I don't need to produce this anymore. So coming off of kind of a long term use of melatonin can actually be tough. You can get really disrupted sleep because you're not producing that melatonin naturally anymore. So I'm all about minimum viable. So if we can produce something that just kind of gets you feeling more relaxed and helps you go to sleep, but doesn't supplement the thing that your body naturally produces, it's a better option.
Yeah, I like it. That's a good idea. I'm definitely gonna check that out. I just added some to my cart right now. Um, Now, before we get out of here for real, and by the way, that it's protect protekt.com. That's where you can find the products.
Correct.
Before we get out of here, tell people where they can find more information on vets
Yep.
and if they're if they qualify, what the process is like for getting involved in the organization.
Yeah, so you can go to vetsolutions.org. That's the website. The organization is focused right now on former special operations veterans, and I believe two or more combat deployments. And again, it's not to say that special operations veterans with two deployments are the only ones that need this stuff. Everybody can benefit, but limited resources, trying to really have an impact on a community, to be a spokesperson to enact political change for everyone. And that change is going to hopefully permeate into the Department of Veterans Affairs. And I hope this stuff is available for every single combat veteran, because I will say that when I served over in Iraq and Afghanistan, some of the most heroic things that I saw on the battlefield were things that infantry, army, and combat marines did in while I was out there with them. So I have so many friends that I look up to as warriors that weren't special operations, and yet my actions pale in comparison to theirs. So, the goal of the organization is to be an advocate for everyone and get this stuff out there and readily available.
Yeah, this Stanford thing should be good. I mean, I lived in Oakland back in the day, after I was out of the army, and they were doing, I think it was 2013, they were doing MDMA tests on PTSD already, right? So they've been involved
Yep,
in this for quite a while. Just finding the funding for it, and then you know, finding a group of people that is, for lack of a better phrase, sexy enough
yeah,
to get attention, and
sure,
veterans do that. So it's
yep,
another kind of another arena in post service life where you have a responsibility to, like, it's not just about you getting help, it's about fucking pioneering new modalities for help, right? That's
yeah.
a big part of it.
Yeah, hey, if I'm going to utilize the seal card or the platform for anything right now, I mean, I think that this is has the biggest impact.
Cool. Yeah. Well, look, man, I appreciate you coming on today. This has been really a really interesting talk, a lot of good information.
Hey, I appreciate you having me. Thank you.
Yeah, anytime, man. And thank you all for listening. This has been Citizen.